Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to present the specific use case around an explainable AI approach for end-to-end procurement process risks in SAP ERP. And unfortunately, our customer couldn't come because of some personal exigencies. So we will be presenting as if the customer is walking through. So please don't take this as a marketing session. This will be purely based on what the customer's insights are and what the customer has kind of leveraged different technologies and tools that are available, both a combination of SAP as well as other open source tools, and how this has led them to do procurement forensics with what are the available variables given the industry size and the different other things that are into question. So as visible on the screen, you can see I'm Rahul and she's Krishna. Both of us work back for our company, which is Technology Risk Limited. The brand name that we use in LinkedIn is TRP Global. We are a boutique risk firm. We advise customers specifically on GRC and process advisory through SAP Signavio. So we are not into any ERP or any kind of, I would say, other technology enablements or anything. We are purely focused on GRC and process advisory. So thank you. Moving forward, I will directly start the discussion. So we have already gone through this. I'll not, I mean, this is just a brief summary, but I'll not take others' time on this. I'll directly jump on to the main topic. So as you can see from here, that these are some of the threats which are impacting our digital connected world as on date. And these statistics are not generated by us. These statistics are part of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners report collected from when COVID started till last year end. So these are some of the high numbers that most of the organizations across the globe are facing. So as you can see, 60% of attacks are concentrated on small and medium businesses. 36% organizations faced attacks on IT and OT devices. 65% of organizations have 500 plus employees with zero password changes observed for a very significant time, which brings about into ITGC controls management, how customers are doing that. There's 5 minutes on an average to attack an IoT device, and some of the other things which are visible on your screen. The most important thing that we looked at is the statistic on the right hand side, 6 months average time to identify data breach and thereby to determine whether it's a suspect transaction or a fraud. So keeping that in mind, excuse me, clicker is not working. Apologies. It's working. Thank you. So this is now from the customer side. So our customer is basically a global asset holding organization which has majority stake into multiple entities across the globe. So which are some of those industries that the customer is basically a holding company for? It is into metals and mining, it is into manufacturing, it is into retail, it is into oil and gas, it is into aviation, it is into nuclear energy, it is into healthcare. And like that, there are many other industries that the customer is basically a majority stakeholder. Naturally, the core business applications that the customer uses across the entities, NetSuite, Oracle EBS, Oracle Fusion, Workday, SAP ECC, SAP S4, variety of SAP solutions, Ariba, SuccessFactors, Fieldglass, Concur, etc., etc. And the question that the internal audit asked us, that in the days of, I would say, not even where the average attention span crosses 15 seconds, in the days of Instagram Reels and YouTube Reels, what can I do to get the attention of my group reporting head as to what are the key challenges in terms of providing assurance to business. So from a management assurance perspective, how quickly can I get a top list of agenda items which I can bring forward to the notice of my core stakeholders? So some of the things that they need to focus upon or they needed to report back to the board was continuous controls monitoring and whether there are effective governance frameworks in each of these entities across this hybrid landscape that we talked about. With this in mind, the obvious next step was to do a transformation of the internal audit function. So when I do the transformation of the internal audit function, the old approach or the traditional approach is that I will look into the process narratives, I will look into each of the risks for the business processes in which are configured, and then I will look at all the controls which are part of my RSCM, the risk and controls matrices, and whether they are effective or not based upon the evidences and the self-certification checks that are being done. Now combine that with all the complexities of the modern world. So the left-hand side represents basically of the icons, the left-hand side represents the traditional approach where we used to have floppies in KB. Now we are into pen drives which are into multiple GBs. We used to have standalone on-prem applications. Now everything is into cloud. We are whole and soul into RPA, into leveraging automation, and there are constant analytics, I would say disruptions, somebody saying SAC is the best, somebody saying Power BI is the best. So we don't know what kind of reporting will work with management. And finally, when we come into this particular side, that the customer already has different entities which are on different business applications, the job for the internal audit function will be extremely difficult when they have to scan through all the exception reports that are coming from the individual entities. So how to do deep layered analysis so that it does not something which misses the human eye and all the traditional algorithms and the rules that are there in place. The internal audit is more interested in trying to identify what are the fine patterns, what are the thin threads which are coming out, what are the, I would say, key outliers which are not or which cannot be detected by the human eye, but through a various categorization of prioritization, I would say risk weightages, industry benchmarks, all the different attributes, I can identify which are the observations that I need to report back to the board. So with that approach in mind, this is some of the key challenges that the internal audit function faced: heterogeneous landscape, complex application layer, different publishers. So SAP works in different way, Oracle works in a different way, and like that. There are different stakeholders. In some companies, IT is driving the entire risk and controls initiative. In certain companies, it is the compliance department. In certain companies, it is finance. In certain companies, it is internal audit. Somewhere it is probably outsourced internal audit, so you do not know. And hence, there are different KPIs which need to be managed and reported. So what we co-developed with the customer was that we developed a complete risk register across the processes. We defined the risk rating criteria with a weighted average of all these variables. And depending upon the nature of the controls that the customer needed to implement, whether it is detective, preventive, and all the other things that are there, we came down on the controls that matter as a part of the filter. And then individual entities can then easily get back into their reporting houses to make their houses are in order, and all these reporting layers go back to the global entity, which is the holding company, who is our principal customer, and they had a global view. So the global view helped the overall internal audit group to identify which all entities are falling outside the traditional lines, where all the issues are, and how they need to be corrected. At the same time, different regional entities can have their own benchmarks. They can have their own definitions of compliances, their own definitions of policies and procedures, which they need to adhere to. So it's a constant communication between the global entity and the local entities that at least is available right now. Now, with that in mind, this was the way we tried to utilize some of the additional tools that are available. So we started with the fact that we tried to scan the entire procurement process, starting from, I would say, procurement, like the purchase requisition to the purchase order, then the goods receipt, then the invoice reconciliation, and then the payment. So how is it that we can take a snapshot of all the individual timelines along with all the controls that are there, how each of these timelines are currently mapped against these activities, and where all these activities are done very, very fast or very slowly over odd hours. So like that, we developed different algorithms. We use machine learning because we developed certain utilities on ABAP by which we could monitor all the user activities during the office hours, during non-office hours, all the different, I would say, attributes we could monitor, and through that, through some of the parts can be more than the total methodology, we challenged the certain transactions based on the overall outliers that they were committing to in spite of the given, I would say, benchmarks that are there. So with that in mind, we tried to then streamline certain rules, because at the end of the day, what we are doing is we are using unsupervised machine learning, but machine learning is as good and as bad as what we instruct the organizations to do. So with more and more data that we need, the quality of data, we use to identify that and try to streamline all the different rules that are there. And with the help of that, we try to further investigate. So in terms of investigation, what we did is, I'll walk you through one particular example in this whole process. So vendor master maintenance versus release of purchase order. So not only did we scan whether the activities have been performed, we also scan whether the activities have been done for the same organizational unit. So it does not mean it is for the same company code or not, whether it is connecting back to the same plant or the same sales org or to the same purchase organization through the different SAP tables where the configurations are mapped. After that, we are linking back whether the data has been changed or not. So we are challenging the output of the CD POS and the CD HDR table data changes. And finally, whether it is relating back to the same business object, which in our case, in this particular case, it was the vendor. So with that, then we tried to sit with the customer and said, what are your risk thresholds? Is something which is more than $10,000 worrisome for you? Let us group all those transactions and bring it to you as an outlier case. Is it something that less than 10,000, but it is happening quite a number of times? So we also tried to identify those set of transactions from a frequency perspective, something which is happening more than 3 times in a month or more than maybe 7 times in a quarter. We are also capturing that. So like that, we tried to leverage all of these, and we invoked Python APIs, and we constantly did this machine learning modeling. And through that, we also have extended this right now, as we said that our customer uses a variety of applications. So if one part of the activity is currently done in SAP and the other part is done in Oracle, we have also leveraged that from a cross-application controls monitoring perspective and tried to bring out this fraud analytics suspect detection. We are not confirming whether every transaction that we are suggesting is a fraud, but at the end of the day, we are classifying them to be suspect, and obviously we need more detailed analytics and more detailed investigation done by the customer to determine whether actually a fraud has happened or not. And for the specific case that we did, we were able to finally establish that actually there was something wrong, which was done by specific suppliers. Moving forward, what is the road ahead for us? What are we going to do with the next set of, I would say, transformation ideas in risk and compliance? So again, this is the traditional method of ensuring whether the controls that are currently configured, whether they are effective or not. So we are talking about periodicity, we are talking about identification, and we are talking about reporting. So how frequently are you revisiting your controls? Who are your monitors and what are the steps that they are doing, and how you are reporting back your exceptions upwards to give assurance to management. Now, this is the traditional workflow that many companies leverage or many companies do. But beyond this, what are the challenges in this kind of a model which we have faced or what we have identified? High time to report suspect transactions. Imagine doing this for, say for example, a control which is customer master maintenance versus sales order processing. Now, if I have to do this activity for a particular user who is doing customer master maintenance and also who is doing sales order processing for one particular quarter, I will have to download 2 sets of reports. I will have to manually match the data, and then I will have to report back. And that too, it happens in a completely different system. Now, it all depends upon how many such controls I have to do a effective, I would say, reporting back. And thereby, if I understand that there are more than, I would say, 200 plus such scenarios which should be monitored in a standard ERP environment across business processes, the time to detect and time to report suspect transactions will be very, very high. Obviously, more the volume of data, more will be the time taken. So naturally, the traditional approach is to use sample sizes. And thereby, the accuracy of your findings is a question mark. In today's world, nobody believes in sample data or sample analytics anymore. Your people need to be skilled enough to be able to do this activity day in, day out. And essentially, you need an army of people to be able to do this. And then your main transactions are happening on a different system. Your evidence collection is happening on a different system. So all of this together, we have tried to kind of streamline it. We are in the process of doing it. So right now, everybody is talking about generational AI. So what is the risk, the definition of that particular risk? We are planning to leverage generational AI, supervised machine learning to predict control effectiveness. So going with the quality of the data, what we are trying to do is that with the orchestration layer, we are going to report when exactly the control is supposed to fail based on the user history, based on the control's history of performance. And thereby, we are going to leverage the following tools: ChatGPT for the generational AI, BTP for the process orchestration, because obviously BTP has all those things in place from a cloud to on-prem, everything. It has connectors that you can build your own apps. And then the reporting part, we are trying to leverage SAP Analytics Cloud. So this is what we are planning to do. We have already started on this particular journey, and we hope to bring in that particular, I would say, computational guidance, and I would say that cognitive ability to predict whether this particular control is effective and when it is going to fail, which can alert businesses way before pre-audit or scheduled audit as to what all changes they need to do in order to avoid red flags in proper statutory audit. So that's it from our side, short. And please, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us. You can ask one question at least. Yes, please. So if I understand your question properly, it is like you are trying to ask how it is different from the standard GRC solutions which are available in the market, not just SAP GRC. Is it different from the traditional segregation of duties review and any other kind of controls review that are possibly done? So what we are trying to do to answer your question, we are talking about an entire controls repository which is not just focusing on segregation of duties. We are also talking about master data controls. We are also talking about configuration controls. We are also talking about transaction data controls, where somehow the traditional SAP GRC solutions have been found to be wanting. The more complex the algorithm or more complex the query is, the traditional SAP GRC tools do not give the required performance that they have. Moreover, when it comes to integrating a variety of applications, that too in different deployment models, one on-prem, one cloud, it is a challenge right now. Although there is IAG, but even in IAG, there are certain challenges in terms of integration. You have very limited capabilities, or rather I would say, it's a SAP forum, so I will not reveal the entire truth, but there are limited capabilities of making customizations to your logic when it comes to IAG. It is kind of pre-delivered. So with all those things in mind, and essentially then again, for one part you're using the traditional GRC, for the other part you're using IAG. So again, it's a combination. You need skilled people. What if I have a ready platform where I give the rules in a completely business-friendly language? You do not need to know coding. Everything can be done on the front end, following the low-code, no-code policy. You can drag and drop and define your own KPIs for reporting, and the dashboard becomes available with all the, I would say, valves indicating what is your percentage of success, what is the percentage of failure. You click on and you drill down and you get all the details, and you can bring them down onto your local versions for your own further analytics, deep dive activities, all of that. On top of that, through BTP, we are trying to leverage the real-time, actual real-time messaging, which I can say, like traditionally, in reference to your question, those alerts rather, were based on jobs. If some control is deficient at morning 11 o'clock, and the job is scheduled at night 12 o'clock, the concerned stakeholder will only get to know next day, which is against the modern generation's Instagram reel and YouTube memory kind of definition. We want immediate results. So there we are using BTP for instant notifications, because we are now defining it as an event. We are not defining it as a job anymore. So combining elements where SAP has also shown flexibility to innovate, we are leveraging all of that, and then we are bringing it up to the client for reporting purposes. So if you are, I mean, if your question is like, is it only for on-premise applications, or is it for cloud-based applications as well? So as we talked about, our customer has a variety of applications. One of the entities, it's into nuclear power. They have SAP ECC, which is on on-prem. They have SAP S4, which is on cloud, private cloud. Then they have Ariba, which is public. Then they have Fieldglass, which is again public. Then they have Concur, which is private. Then they have MDG, which is an ABAP-based on-prem solution. So we are utilizing APIs wherever they are exposing APIs. SAP GRC does not expose API, unfortunately. So there we need to make certain customizations. But for customers who do not have SAP GRC, they can look at some kind of custom solution, which we have developed as a part of this overall exercise, and it is working for all the entities that we mentioned at the start. Any reference to any similar kind of audit observations that you have seen in your organization where you feel that you can leverage automation? We are not challenging the traditional auditing approaches. We are just ensuring that you do not get disheartened by the sample size, you do not get disheartened by the data volume. We can take care of all these challenges, and we can bring out the reporting and the dashboarding in a flash, utilizing all the latest wireframes that companies like Meta and Google and Microsoft are utilizing. So if you want to know more, we are leaving, unfortunately. After this, we have a flight to catch. Otherwise, I would have told you to come to booth 8, where we have a proper, presentation and all those things. However, we will be handing out our brochures and flyers. Please feel free to reach out to us, not just from a, I would say, business inquiry specific purposes, but if you have any specific issue and you want certain, I would say, a peer look at it, please feel free to reach us. We are working with majority customers and we are also working with partners. So feel free to let us know if there is something where, because if you are giving us any use cases, please be rest assured to know that we will develop it in-house. So it's only going to add to our repository. So it's not just from a business purpose that we are requesting. If you feel like there is something that you are seeing in your organization, which is a challenge, or your industry, there's a specific challenge, please let us know. We will work it back, and as and when we are ready with a pilot, we will inform you. It's for your own, I would say, understanding that you can take it back to your own set of people and your own set of stakeholders and customers as well. Thank you. All right.